So yeah, so I vow never to support the Bob Ross company anymore. No more. No more. It's really unfair and unfortunate. And that is the new Bob Ross documentary that released on Netflix. It's Bob Ross, Happy Accidents, Betrayal and Greed. I believe that is the full title of it. But it is prominently featured there on Netflix. I heard about this documentary about a month ago. Like many of us here in the US, and I know Joy of Painting was broadcast in international countries as well. I know it was huge in Japan and Mexico at one point. But we grew up watching Bob Ross on PBS. Usually it was either early in the morning or early in the afternoon, if I recall correctly. But it was in alignment with, your Sesame Street, your Electric Company, your Mr. Rogers, and what have you. But I watched Bob Ross since I was a kid. But it was one of those things where I would watch it in the background. It would be on. Because of his voice, it's so soothing, right? The way he talks to the audience, the way he describes what he's painting, and and he's a phenomenal painter. He paints these amazing landscapes in 30 minutes, and he teaches you that and gives you the confidence that you can do it too. Anyone can do it as long as they have the love and passion for it. But it's funny because for the longest time, we've known Bob Ross for what we saw on TV. The dude with the afro, the hippie-like guy who seems to be happy all the time, has a soothing voice, and can paint phenomenal paintings in a very short period of time. But not a lot of us knew about his background or what's going on behind the scenes. And what I really loved about this documentary, it finally gave us that glimpse of what he was like behind the scenes, or a little bit more background and history about it. And boy, when you look at the title of the documentary, you think, is this a scandalous piece where it's like they're going to reveal some nasty stuff that Bob Ross has done in his life, where he, maybe he was a swinger, or, maybe he swindled people out of money and all that. But it's not even that. It's the people that he associated himself with that kind of done a lot of these crazy and bad things. And Bob himself, he was happy painting for people. He was happy teaching people. He had tons of workshops all across the country, that had his name, and it taught, painting classes to people like you and I. And you would learn how to paint the Bob Ross way, which again, you learned about his technique of painting, and how it was an old technique from way back in, early days of, when you go to the museum, you see a lot of these more biblical and paintings like from Italy and all that stuff like that. That is used. They painted that using the same techniques that Bob Ross used. So it's not even a new technique that he invented. It was an existing technique that he just kind of made it his own, which was very fascinating. You learn about his the people that inspired him, and the people he looked up to. You learn a lot about his son. His son is very prominent in the documentary, and the relationship that they had. If you remember, his son would be featured on the show too, and he's also a phenomenal painter. Bob Ross always wanted to pass along the business to his son and have his son take over the show and all that. But what you do learn, which is very eye-opening to me, was that as he was filming these shows, he was going through a lot of different stuff in his personal life, depending on what season of the show you were in. Bob Ross lost his wife at a certain time, and during that season of the period where he lost his wife, you could see he was a little bit melancholy. He was trying to deal with, the sadness and all that, and he was relying on the audience to, hang in there with him. And he, appreciated the audience. He appreciated all the letters. He addressed all the letters of well wishes from, the fans, and, it kept him going, and kept, his painting continues to make him happy. And entertaining the audience as well, kept him going. There was, and I'll get more in detail about this in a minute, when he was having business troubles with the people that he partnered with, how he was unhappy with how the business was being run, he would kind of, in the Bob Ross way, express his, unhappiness on the show, but because it's Bob Ross, as an audience, not knowing what's going on behind the scenes, we didn't really catch up on that. But there were certain things that he would say, certain things that he would hint on, that would express his, his unhappiness about all that stuff. And then later on in the series, he was battling cancer, and he filmed multiple seasons while he was fighting cancer. And they were saying that because of certain materials that he used during his painting, that could have led to him getting the type of cancer that he got. But the most disheartening thing you learn from this documentary is how this man's life, towards the end, while he was, resting in bed, dying from cancer, it became a huge legal battle that he had to deal with every day with the partners that he partnered with, who were controlling the Bob Ross Inc., the company, the corporation that ran the Bob Ross brand. And the battle primarily was over his name, and you see now tons of products with Bob Ross's name and picture on it. You have action figures, lunch boxes. There's a Twitch channel on Twitch that 24/7 airs the Bob Ross Joy of Painting show, all seasons, right? And it's run by the Bob Ross company. But none of the proceeds, none of the revenue, none of that is going to the family. His son is still alive. His son still paints, but he doesn't see one dime of that, and it was Bob Ross's well wishes that once he passed away, that the name would be entrusted to his brother, who's still around, and his son. However, since his son was young at the time, the son was only getting 49% of ownership, while the brother got, I believe, 51%. And guess what happened? His brother sold him out. The owners of the company, which is a husband and wife, kept harping and bothering the brother because they wanted to own the rights to the name. They wanted the name, and somehow they got him to sell off the rights, his rights to the name, which is the majority holding rights. And so now they own complete control of the Bob Ross name and anything associated with Bob Ross, and they are profiting from it. They still sell the paints, the brushes. Like I said, anything with the Bob Ross name is going to them. And it was everything that was going against Bob Ross's wishes at the end. The wife that he was married to at the time doesn't see a dime of it. His son doesn't see a dime of it. It sounds like the brother got a payout for those rights, and then that's it. So very, very disheartening stuff, and very, very interesting once you really see it fleshed out in front of you. And it's unfortunate that is the ending legacy of Bob Ross, where all he wanted to do was, do something that he enjoyed, and that was painting and entertaining people and bringing people along on his journey and his love for painting, because that's really, really what he wanted to do. So, and again, and there were a lot of happy things too, and a lot of other interesting things that you learn. Like, for example, the reason why he speaks the way he speaks. It's so interesting how he invented ASMR. He was the original inventor of ASMR because he said he knows his audience. His audience is primarily female, and these are people who maybe sometimes they're shy, and maybe they're not confident enough in themselves that they could paint. But he talks to them in this very intimate way, and this really pleasant way, so that he could feel more closely to the audience. And as you're doing your happy tree and this little happy bush here, and maybe this little cloud that pops up on the corner over there, I like clouds, and all that kind of stuff. He does that on purpose so that the audience can feel closer to him. It was like a form of intimacy. Just like you're flirting with a female, as he would tell people, like you want to make them feel comfortable and trust you. And it's so funny that was his main reason for talking the way he talks on his broadcast. So literally, this is a guy that invented ASMR. So all you ASMR people on your YouTubes and your Twitches, you all have Bob Ross to thank for that. And now it's this big thing that everyone is going crazy about, right? But it's so fascinating, and also very disheartening with what went down behind the scenes and what is still happening now. Because again, this couple is still alive. They're still controlling the corporation and the name, and they're profiting from all of it. And one thing that the documentary also states was that there's a bunch of other people who are close to Bob Ross who really wanted to talk about Bob Ross as a person and the struggles and challenges that he went through, but they didn't want to do it in the documentary because they were fearful for getting sued by these two people who runs the Bob Ross corporation. So it shows you that the type of fear that these two put into people who challenge their ownership of the Bob Ross name and all that. So I vow never to support the Bob Ross company anymore. I bought a Funko Pop, like in the last couple of years. I at times would watch the Twitch channel, and all that, because, Joy of Painting is a fascinating show and it still holds up today. But no more. It's really unfair and unfortunate. And I don't know what's going to happen once, the owners pass away, who's going to take over and all that stuff like that. The son tried to fight them in court and lost terribly. So I highly recommend you check it out and you watch it, especially if you are like me and you grew up with him. You grew up with that program. You know about that program, and he was always one of those figures that I always wanted to learn more about, like know more about his history, know more about his background, know what made him the way he is. And the documentary does a really good job at going into all that and diving into all that. So do check it out. It's on Netflix. I'm pretty sure it's going to be very popular for the next couple of weeks there. So